I never really been a big fan of multiplayer games. I was mostly a loner in my youth and didn't have that many friends to play. In high school, that was when video games sort of started to embrace the online scene. The seventh generation of consoles were finally able to connect to the internet without ritualistic sacrifices, so a lot of games started to include multiplayer modes. This is even when some games started coming out as multiplayer only, like Mag or Starhawks. Though back then, a multiplayer only game sounded insane unless it was free. How the times have changed, huh? Most multiplayer scenes now are live service PvP games. Currently, the flavors seem to be extraction or hero shooters, which is pretty lame. And with the focus on multiplayer scenes now as live service games, they sort of did away with unlockables or progression in multiplayer modes. Some games will do events that you have to play like during the event period to unlock emotes or stickers or a skin if you're lucky. But most of the cool stuff is behind a paywall, which is cringe that this has become the norm. Though I recall things not always being like that, I didn't get to play the 7th gen multiplayer games too much. The most I played was Borderlands 2 with my best friend from high school. What's up, Alex? Borderlands 2 multiplayer playing pretty simple in that it was just a campaign, but your buddy was along for the ride. And we still see that kind of co-op around, though more rare now. But I wanted to talk about 4 instances of an interesting multiplayer game mode that were attached to single-player games. In no particular order, though I am saving my favorite for last, these games were all primarily single-player first and had pretty interesting and neat multiplayer game modes just kinda included with the game. Though, to combat secondhand sales, this was the time when games were doing online classes, which were little codes included with the game manual so you could use the online features of whatever game you bought. So if you bought the game used, you would still need to pay for the online pass, which was like priced at $10. It was a pretty stupid idea, and I'm not even sure which games actually use them. The only one that comes to mind was Dead Space 2, but the multiplayer of that is not included in this video. What is included in this video, though, is Batman. The Batman Arkham games are really cool games, and became a sort of blueprint for the genre. You can even see its influence in the Spider-Man Insomniac games. The combat was fast and snappy, and the puzzles were neat, and detective mode gets tiring quickly, but as the old saying goes, the game really made you feel like Batman. They were, however, entirely single-player games, because of course they were. Co-op in these games would have probably been really cool, but we never saw it happen. Across 4 games, 5 counting Blackgate, we had Arkham Asylum, City, Night, and Origin. Origin being the least popular of the games, as it was a prequel and a sort of B-team project that was pretty disappointing. I remember there is a game-breaking bug in one of the sections where you have to climb like a bridge, and there's enemies on the bridge ahead of you. So as Batman's climbing up, the enemies aggro because they see you, and they approach you, which has Batman enter a combat stance before he actually climbs over the bridge. So he ends up just floating in the air with his fist up. And because of that, you can't get over the bridge to actually harm the enemies, and you can't walk away farther enough to de-aggro them to get back into exploration mode. So you just end up soft locked. And I remember this being towards the end of the game, otherwise I would have gotten footage to see if I could recreate it, but I remember hearing that instead of fixing the bugs, they were prioritizing making DLC. So I don't know if they ever actually fixed it or not. Anyway, this isn't about that. Arkham Origins actually had a multiplayer mode included and it was pretty interesting. It was 3 teams, Joker's gang, Bane's gang, and the duo of Batman and Robin. I believe it was a 3v3v2, if not then it was just 2v2v2, where both gangs fought over objectives while a dynamic duo attempts to take down members of both teams. The gang members having a fixed amount of tickets to respawn with as they go through lives, and the duo needing to focus on using grapple points to stealth around and take out enemies quickly before retreating. Both heroes were actually pretty limited on what they can do, and died pretty easily to gunfire. But having the match be between 3 opposing teams made for some fun and intense bouts, as you had to keep your eyes up and ready to see any of those caped dorks swooping down on you. Since they get the drop on you, you're pretty much done for. I'm not sure what the conditions were, but I recall at some point in matches there would be like an icon that spawns on a door, and an operator telling you the gang boss showed up and wants to be let in. If the player is able to reach the door and open it, they can switch to being Joker or Bane, which were characters that had higher stats and like better weapons, like Joker had an infinite ammo revolver. This usually makes them top priority target for everyone else, kind of like becoming a hero character in the Star Wars Battlefront games. It was a pretty fun and interesting mode, but by the time I checked out the servers, it was pretty bare and I only got a few matches in. Still though, it was a pretty interesting concept, and it's a shame that I never saw any follow-up or expansion. Bigger multiplayer modes, more unlockables, more gangs like Penguin or Two-Face, or even Harley joining could be cool. Batman's team being expanded, so you're not just facing the two of them over and over, like having Red Hood or Batgirl join in with their own distinct playstyles would be really interesting. We did see a co-op-focused game in Gotham Knights, but that had a pretty short lifespan. It seemed like the Arkham series is on the shelf. I doubt if we got a new one, we would see something like a multiplayer mode included. But with how big Marvel Rivals is, DC could probably use something like that. But anyway, on to the next game. I like Bioshock 2 more than the first and more than Infinite. I don't want to talk about the campaign right now though, so we're just going straight into the multiplayer. I only played a little bit as well, but from what I remember, it was mainly team deathmatch modes. What really interested me was the opening prologue. The multiplayer actually had a story aspect to them. You played as a Splicer during the Fallout Rapture. You had a few avatars to select from, but they were distinct characters. I can't recall much details on who the characters were, but from what I remember, they had little blurbs of their backstories, and as you played and ranked up, you unlocked more of their lore and cosmetics that seemed to actually show them degrading and becoming more and more like the Splicers from the campaign. You're able to take 2 pairs of guns and a plasmid combo with you, but I don't recall if you could swap on the fly. What I do remember is you could combine plasmids with allies, like in the campaign. Though, the only one I really remember making use of was the little tornado mine traps, or I think they were waterfalls or something? I don't remember. But you could hit them with like fire to make a fire tornado, or the waterfall you could hit with lightning to like shock them on top of already pushing them up in the air. You had access to most of the guns from the campaign too, like the shotgun, revolver, and machine gun. And as you ranked up, I think you got skins for them too. I unfortunately was never able to play more than like 2 or 3 matches, so I don't know much of the length of the unlockables, but it seemed pretty interesting. Oh, and I guess I should mention, I think these games in these videos are still playable. I'm not exactly sure, but I think the servers for most of them are still on, or they went player to player, or maybe they're always player to player. I have no idea. But if anything sounds interesting, it might be possible to assemble your homies and even try a few games out. Reach out to me if you do. I might be down to play these a little again. Though the next game I think will be more difficult to get people together for since it's actually not on PC. Resistance Fall of Man was an entirely 7th generation PS3 first-person shooter game that was about what if aliens invaded during World War II. I think that was the concept anyways. Besides the first game, this premise does not last long, and by Resistance 2, you're playing as Special Forces members and get some cool alien tech guns. Though, these aliens are also like zombies? They like infect people or something. Honestly, my Resistance lore is pretty blurry because I played these games when I was a teeny tot. And I remember Resistance 2 was like the game I actually made a PSN account to play. I never actually touched the like normal multiplayer mode, which was pretty much just your standard first-person shooter PvP, team deathmatch and all that. What interested me though was the co-op. So in the plot of Resistance, the alien forces, the Chimera, have gotten a pretty firm foothold over Earth as they invade. The main campaign has you play as Hale and a squad of Special Forces soldiers that go through key locations and battles to try and sabotage and stop the invading army. In the co-op, however, you play as some schmuck in the military sent to battle. I think in lore, they're a part of that same Special Forces squad that Hale is, but they go to like different locations and they're doing different things. There were a handful of levels, and I remember them pretty lengthy and sort of like Left 4 Dead in the way they play. The co-op, I believe, was up to 8 players, and there were 3 classes, and each served an important role. They were medic, soldier, and specialist. The medic could drop healing packs, which also other players could pick up to restore HP, which is the only way to heal. They also got some of the neater alien weapons, such as the Bullseye, which was the gun where you could shoot a homing bullet and every other bullet would seek it out, like in the Fifth Element. And I think their damage was overall the lowest. The soldier was the tank of the group, and I don't actually know what all he has. I never played as him, but I do know he had a vital role. Being armed with the minigun, they could fire rapidly at a target and mow down hordes, as well as aggro big enemies, and keep themselves safe with the personal shield they were equipped with. The last class was the specialist, the sort of sniper of the group, since it's the only one to get snipers. They get some alien guns too, and they had pretty solid damage. Their big role was support though, as they could refill ally ammo. There was no drops in these modes too, so the specialist and medic were the only means of resupplying. I remember me and my brother tried doing the co-op with just us two, but with no unlocks for upgrades it was too difficult. One thing I thought was super cool though, we could actually play the online co-op using split screens, so me and my brother played the co-op missions with randoms a bunch. It was a good time. Resistance is pretty much done though, and I'd be really surprised if we ever saw a revival. Even if we did, I thought they would include a co-op structure like this. Something like that being included with a single player game is completely unheard of today. Next game, last game. Looking back at this game, it feels kind of nuts it came from Ubisoft of all people. What's crazier is that this game's multiplayer was ripe for microtransactions that I'm genuinely surprised we didn't see Ubisoft run it into the ground. I'm talking about the multiplayer for Assassin's Creed. I'm not really the biggest Assassin's Creed fan, to be honest. I played all of them up to 3 and then stopped there. I never actually played Black Flag, which I hear is the best one, but I never got hands on it. The multiplayer mode I'm talking about was included in Brotherhood and in 3, and I think in Black Flag also, but again, never played that one. I won't really be talking. I don't know how it compares or adds to the multiplayer modes of Brotherhood and in 3, so I'll just focus on those two mainly. I will say, however, the multiplayer mode in these games were really fun. The standard mode was called Wanted, and you had a handful of characters to choose from in Brotherhood. You could also unlock skins for them, which weren't all that impressive looking, but they were pretty neat. And you could get weapons for them too. As you load into a match, the map is filled with everyone's characters as they spawn in as like random NPCs that are just walking around the town. And you are randomly assigned a target. The target appears on your HUD, and you have a compass in the center of your screen at the bottom. So the closer you get to the target, the more that compass fills out. It's a circular compass that like starts glowing blue, and the blue fills in the circle to show how close you are to the target. It doesn't actually point you in the direction of the target because that'd be busted. But the warmer you are, the more the circle is filled in. Also, multiple people could have the same target. So like if you're like in first place and doing really well, more people would have you marked as their target to kill. But if you're doing really poorly, then nobody would have you assigned as their target to kind of give you breathing room. So like you'd just be on the hunt and you wouldn't be hunted anymore. But that was only if you were like at the bottom. You also had the ability to disguise yourself, which is like a skin swap basically. Because your hunter won't have your like disguise on their HUD. They like if you're playing as the gesture character, then they're going to be looking at the gesture NPCs to see which one's acting out of the ordinary. But with the disguise ability, you could actually switch to a different character. It's random, you don't choose, but you could switch to like the knight or one of the ladies or the butcher or something, and they'd be looking for the gesture because they have no idea. You could of course activate disguise while someone's looking at you, and that would kind of like blow it for you, but you know, that's part of the game. There was also like 3 different states on which you could kill somebody in this mode, which I believe one was like incognito, which like you're just like really subtle, you walk over to them and you're able to just press the assassinate button. And these kills usually had like the most subtle animations too, like it was like a poke in the neck or something like that, some sort of poison or just like a quick stab in the eye, and then you just kept moving, so like really like subtle. And then there was one that was called like, I think it was like discreet or something. It was like you were like kind of jogging up to them. It depends on like how much you're moving when you do the kill. So like if you're like in the jogging state and you go up and kill someone, it's a little bit more like deadly. You kind of do more for them. Like sometimes it can be like a neck snap or something, or like a couple of punches in the face, which is more noticeable, and they take a little longer. But like if you're in a hurry and you want to get the kill and you see them like right there, you can just kind of break into a jog and destroy them. And then the last one, I don't know what the name is, but it was like the going loud state, where like if you're full on sprinting, or if you're doing like an aerial assassination or something like that, then your character like pounces on them and then beats them to death with like a hammer or something. Or if you just sprint up to them, you'll like pick them up and break their back or something like that. Which usually those kills were the most brutal and also the like loudest. So like if someone was hunting you and you did this kill, then they for sure would like, okay, that's my target, there he is. So it left you pretty vulnerable in exchange. If you could identify your hunter, there was actually a way to defend yourself too. It was a little tricky because they got priority. So if you like both walked up to each other and mashed the kill button, the hunter will always win. But if you got the drop on them, you could do like a punch, which I think universally every character just did a sucker punch, which left them stunned for a bit. It also removed you as their target, and it really embarrassed them. I remember how exciting it was closing in on my prey and not knowing how many eyes were on me. And when I got my kill, I could see other characters moving in or breaking into runs, which would cause me to break into a run. There were some like gates that you could run through that they would close behind you when you ran, so they couldn't follow you. Of course, you could parkour too, which being able to use rooftops to chase or stalk, though anyone looking up will know you're not an NPC. You could use the parkour, jumping in haystacks or into crowds and disguising yourself, all to escape. Plus, if you committed to chasing after someone, that also reveals you to the other hunters. It was pretty fun and interesting game mode, and I think the premise was they were using the simulation to train Abstrago employees? Was it called Abstrago? Abstrago? I don't remember. Assassin's Creed 3 really kicked it up with the customization too. The characters had lore attached to them and accessories, skins, and weapons. I remember I think one character was a jester. They were twins that split a pair of scissors between them. And they swore to each other that they were going to kill each other with those blades. I think that was the blurb of text attached to their lore. You're also able to unlock new kill animations for each degree of alert too. There was different high profile and stealth kills, so you could really show off how committed to that character you were. I never actually managed to get deep into the Assassin's Creed 3 multiplayer, so I didn't unlock most of it, but I was actually kind of surprised how Ubisoft was way ahead of the curve with heavy monetization of multiplayer games, and didn't even monetize it. With the games becoming more RPGs, I doubt we'll ever see the multiplayer make a return, and I don't think they'll ever do like a standalone spin-off for it, especially with the state Ubisoft is in currently. I really like the multiplayer for these games though, and to be perfectly honest, hero shooters and extraction shooters never interest me much. I played some Overwatch and Marvel Rivals and they were just kinda meh. They feel the same way to me that most gamers feel about like FIFA or 2K. I much prefer these sort of experimental and weird multiplayer modes, but at the end of the day, I guess I prefer single player anyways, so whatever. I'd still love to see these kind of modes return, included in single player games or not. But yeah, that's pretty much the video. I could think of a few multiplayer modes that I thought were pretty cool and interesting from this generation, so if you're interested, let me know and I can make maybe another one of these. Also, did you ever play any of these games, or know of any games similar to them? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to check out more content like this. I'm out of battery now, so I gotta go recharge. If you made it this far, why not hand over your like and maybe even subscribe? This is my first time trying to make content like this, so if you want to give me any pointers or tips or even just thoughts, feel free to. For example, advice on how to end a video, because honestly I'm just going to stop talking now and like let the background music play or something. Alright, see you later. Also, I wanted to mention a quick shout out to the Twitter account Stormslayer. They do a bunch of reposts and repacks of old games that are not available anymore on PC. They share a lot of reposts of other people's posts and their own stuff, including they revived Resistance Fall of Man multiplayer for the first game, and they've made it crossplay between PC and PS3. Really impressive stuff, really cool video game preservation stuff. If any of this stuff interests you, if the 7th generation console was like at all cool to you guys, make sure you check out their stuff. It's very, very cool.